Good morning, Opening Pathways viewers, or whatever time it is when you're watching this episode. I'm doing something a little unusual today, but I'm super excited about it. I have Ryan Avett with me. Ryan is a keynote speaker and author and the managing partner of the Speaking Consulting Network. We're going to learn about that as well as a lot about Ryan. Hello, Ryan. How are you? Welcome to the show.
Hey Tom, thanks so much for having me. Doing well.
Good. It's great to have you here. I want to start at the beginning because somewhere along this journey, something sparked you to start writing and speaking and then helping others with that. Tell us a little about what you're doing and what sparked your idea to get started on this path.
I appreciate that. I think like many entrepreneurs, I started the traditional sell anything you could on the corner. So lemonade, I offered my guinea pigs and my dog to be part of a petting zoo. I tried everything growing up, but one of the things that launched into was a multinational marketing firm that helped raise money for nonprofits around the world, building schools and accessible healthcare. And by the time I was in high school, we had helped nonprofits raise over $50 million. And that was my first real journey into the business world. And from there, got swept up into this thing called SaaS and wasn't sure what that was at the time. And this thing called angel investing and venture capital. Didn't know about any of that in the early 2000s. And then as I went through college, got involved in the venture-backed startup world. But all throughout all of those moments, if you will, I was always curious about how to lead well. As a teenager leading people in, at that point in time, silent generation, baby boomers, and Gen X, I was always looked down on, a lot of questions about why I was in the role I was in. And it really started to make me curious, why are people the way they are and how do they react? So after almost 20 years in the venture-backed world of varying size startups, I decided to not join after an exit and not join another one and focus on reading and writing and speaking and helping leaders stay relevant in a changing world because society is changing rapidly. And that's really what I've been passionate about the whole time.
Yes, 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 yes. I love this story of how we go through our lives and reinvent ourselves. Some people don't choose to do that, and I guess that's great for them. But I remember my dad worked for the same company for 60 years,
Wow.
60. And I remember along the journey saying, I don't think that's going to be my path. So,
Yeah.
speaking of paths, what point did you say to yourself on this new venture you're on or newish venture that this is my path? And how did you know that?
I love that question. I think it's something that I knew longer than I admitted. And I think that often happens. We don't often always take the off ramp when we need to. But looking at my 20 years or so in venture-backed startups of varying sizes in various industries, from medical device to software and everything in between, I always had this philosophy, and the philosophy came when I was a teenager. Like I said, I was a teenager leading people older than me, and I really wanted to learn how to be a better leader. So I was an avid reader of every leadership book on the New York Times bestseller list. I went to every leadership conference that was within a 500-mile radius that I could drive my, banged up Nissan Maxima to at the time, whatever I could get my hands on. And at one of those conferences, I was 18 or 17. And I remember they said, "What is your purpose in life?" And I wrote down, I went through all my notes from that day, and there were certain words, positive change, inspire, that just kept coming up. And so I ended up writing the motto when I was 18: inspire others towards a positive change. And I think many of the companies that I then went on to be a part of over the next decade and a half or so followed that, and some didn't. And I realized that when the companies that were great companies, great products or services, but didn't follow that mantra or that philosophy, I was just torn up inside. It wasn't worth it. It wasn't fun going to work. And after an exit event in 2021 and looking, my family was growing and looking at what was best for my immediate family, I said, you know what? What can I do to inspire others towards a positive change? I'd already been speaking. People had wanted to hear from me for whatever reason. I'm still not sure why, but grateful I had the opportunity to share a thought or two. And I said, how can I inspire others towards a positive change? And looking at all the lessons that I learned I learned it's all about perspective. It's at different stages in life and different eras in which we're born, we have different perspectives that shape our worldview and how we lead. And I realized that I had a unique story, having led up and led down over the years, that I could share that through a generational lens, looking at the different generations, not as labels or saying, Gen X is this or millennials are this, but instead saying, hey, each one of these cohorts has been shaped by similar influences, meaning they're going to have some similarities, but at the end of the day, they're still all unique individuals. And as a leader, we need to have the right perspective when we go and lead.
Yeah, I love this, Ryan. I sort of have the opposite approach where I got to work with all the generations and work with Zoomers now. And I remember when I was at Facebook, I put a keynote together and I started doing it because I found it fascinating. And I'm sure you do as well about generational shifts and how some things are
Yeah.
cyclic and skip generations. There's interesting things. And what I noticed is all generations, including my own, when we're in those early 20s where we get judged heavily for things like what we wear, how we look. The millennials were all about tattoos and sandals and
Yeah.
flip-flops or whatever it was. That and each generation has their own that I think those are the future societal shifts we're going to see. And our job as older people are to be mentors to it, to be guides to it, and maybe even be opening to learning something versus judging it because just like we were, people are finding their way. And I love it so much. So tell me this, these past few years, you've been really focused on what you're doing. How have you fundamentally changed in the past few years?
That's a really good question. I think a lot of fundamental changes. I as an entrepreneur, and I'm sure most are like this in executive roles or leadership roles, no is not really in our vocabulary. And I have had the freedom to say no to so many things. And I think it's just freeing. And I think there's no point in your career where you shouldn't be able to say no. There was a double negative there. So let me rephrase that. But I think no matter where you are in your career, even if this is your first time out, you should say no. And Gen Z, speaking of generations, is really good at boundaries. They have such extreme boundaries that it could be prohibitive, but that's a deeper conversation.
Yes, it
So
is.
I think for me, being able to say no and spend time where I want to spend time has been absolutely just so helpful. And writing every week for a quick growing audience has been really compelling to me. It's just been really, I've had to think about my own thoughts and how I want to share those to be as unifying as possible in a very polarized world. And I get to talk about all the things you're not supposed to talk about at work. Forbes came up with the 9 things you're not supposed to talk about at work. I regularly write about 7 of them. And
Like
I do so in a way that hopefully, no matter where you are politically or even your own story, it's helpful to give you again that word perspective, not to convince you of my worldview, but to say, hey, here's different sides of this, and we know there's 3 sides to every story: your side, my side, and the truth. So let's see if we can kind of figure out where we fall in that. And it's been so fun hearing the stories of people. Parents saying, I understand my adult child now, or leaders saying, I had been misleading for so long and now I'm back on track.
yes, yes. Occasionally there's four sides. I love this thought about no. And I love it when people say, I've heard no is a complete sentence, right?
Yes.
And the power in saying no can be very, very liberating because I think we're brought up a lot to not say no. And then I
Yeah.
know I went through this training once upon a time where you didn't say no, you said not now was instead of no. And no can be very, very, very useful, right? So tell me
Absolutely.
this. Um, I talk with a lot of people on this podcast, and I'm interested to hear the answer to this question. Somewhere in a very early Ryan's life, somebody had an impact on who you are today. Something planted seeds that then germinated in their own way later. Who was that for you?
Yeah, if I'm allowed to pick more than one, I'll pick a duo, and it would be my parents. And I am really grateful for my parents, and I don't think I realized how grateful I was until I became a parent myself. And I think that is usually how that goes. But they did not say no very often to my entrepreneurial endeavors, but I know that they said no in their career, so that I could pursue different things. And you don't realize the sacrifices parents make until way after the fact. And they would rarely say no when I used up all their printer paper and all their computer ink, which was very expensive back. I mean, not that it's cheaper now, but it was a pretty hefty price for two working class Americans at the time. And, I printed a newspaper, or at least that's what I called it. And that's what got my marketing company started. Someone emailed the @juno.com email address on the back thinking I was some marketing design firm because I had an early copy of Photoshop and it actually looked decent. And so they started emailing me back and forth, not knowing at that time, I think I was 12 or 13.
I love.
I think my parents, and they always, I kind of say it's like a sandbox, right? They said you can build any castle in the sandbox, but here's the boundaries. Make sure you treat everyone, better than you want to be treated. Make sure you have high integrity in everything you do. That way you're never looking over your shoulder. And, there's always going to be naysayers on the outside of the sandbox because they want in your sandbox. You can still treat them with dignity, but don't let it stop you from building.
Yes, yes. You brought up something there that leads to my next question. What personal values have guided you from the start, and which one has deepened recently?
From the start, I think I always had this idea of integrity that was just pounded into me. Do the right thing no matter who's looking, or I guess what now because of all the cameras and technology. But that's always been a driving factor, and that way you can sleep well at night. I've been, as any leader has been, through challenging things, whether that's difficult employee situations or M&A situations or legal situations. And someone just recently asked me that knows intimately what's going on, and one area of my business ventures. They're like, how do you sleep at night? I said, because I didn't do anything wrong, and I
Yeah,
can I can wake up knowing that I did the right thing, and it doesn't mean that it's always clean and not messy. Often it is sticky, but I said I can sleep well knowing that I'm doing the right thing, and I'll do the best thing that I know how to do tomorrow. So I think that's kind of one of the guiding values. But overall. Writing down more recently, you ask what's changed. And I've written down on a piece of paper and have it not here in the studio, but on my desk. It's my five values. And it's the order that I think is so important because so often we sacrifice. We don't say no when we should. And so my first one's faith. My second one is family. My next one is friends. And then everything else. And not having business on that list or finances on that list was really, really challenging. But if those other things are in order and working fine, you don't really care about finances or anything else. And I think it's one of those things that if everything was taken away, you just couldn't live without. And I think it would be those three things in that order for
yeah,
me.
yeah. Love the integrity. I grateful to my father who instilled integrity to me, and my mother compassion.
Mm.
And which has always been a great combination for me. Tell me this, where has life asked you to slow down recently, and what did you hear?
I've mentioned kids a lot, and I've got three kids now, two boys and a girl, and that's caused me to slow down. Kids exemplify or like magnifying glasses of your worst characteristics, but they can also be reflections of some of the better things that you might not have known were deep inside of you. And I think for me, and this I learned this first professionally, and I would say now it's come home. The times I learned most professionally, I would say I learned a lot when I was being mentored. I was held up a lot through accountability and peer relationships. But when I actually learned the most was when I had to sit down and mentor someone else because I had to think about what I did, why I did it, and was it the right thing to do or not. And I think that slowing down and mentoring is so important, and we're missing that a lot in the workforce today. And it's what, if you look at both Gen Z and millennials, it's one of the top things that they crave in any company. Um, but for me, slowing down and trying to instill those same values that we both have said our parents have instilled in us is just so profound. And I think that's important as we raise the next generation, whether people have kids or a family or they're mentoring at the workplace or involved in their community. We have a responsibility of those who have been there before to impart what we've learned, the good and the bad, because sometimes the red flags are the flags you can learn most from and help others avoid that later on.
Yes, yes, I love this. Tell me this, how has your relationship with risk changed in the past few years?
I used to be a huge risk taker. I would bet anything, a lot on my own ability and my own knowledge, which was really dangerous. That's, ego. And betting on your ego is a very dangerous place to be, no matter how smart or intelligent you are. Um, or fortunate or lucky, whatever you want to call it. So I've definitely become much more. Um, I don't know if conservative is the right word, but in business choices that I make, and not just thinking about what's the ROI from a um, financial perspective, because I'm still pretty risky there, still an LP at some funds and all of that. So that hasn't gone away, but it's what is the ROI in my life? Is this going to fulfill and fill up my cup? Is this going to allow me to give back to others in various ways, whether that's time or talent or resources or and I start going through that. And so I think that is where I have my risk factor has just gone from, off the charts to now somewhere probably in the middle. I take some pretty big risks, but I'm seeing that come down quickly because you just change what's important in life.
Hmm. Hmm. How does Ryan decide when to pivot or push through?
Mm. I love sticking with it. I think most of the time, I will, in most scenarios, just keep going forward. I think sometimes the best way out is through. And that's just a personal I have a lot of stamina and resilience for things like that. I think part of that was formation when I was young and getting berated by, I would call them adults when I was still a teenager and working for them as as a agency, if you will, and they didn't know. But I think for me, there's three people I always keep in my life. And there are three categories of people, I should say. One, and I've kind of alluded to it earlier without naming it, but one is the mentor who's a few steps ahead of me that I can call up. And I know that they're going to answer the phone most of the time. Regardless of who it is or how busy they are or how important they are, I know that person has a vested interest in me. And those people have been transformative in my life. And one of those people just recently passed away. And that's been really hard because you want to pick up the phone when that moment hits.
Yeah.
But having, I wouldn't say backup that's terrible, but having redundancy there. And I still have others that I can call in that spot. But there's been multiple times in the past couple months where it's like, I really want to give you this call right now. So the person that's ahead of you, I think the second, and maybe of different value, but extremely valuable. And most people, especially men, don't do this well. And it's the idea of having what I call a running mate. Now, I'm not a runner, so I borrowed this from someone else, or the concept of it. But that person that's kind of spurring you along as you're running life's race, the one that will set the pace if you're slowing down, or if you're speeding up, they can kind of pull you back a little bit. That knows what's going on in your life. Accountability partner is what some people call it. And I've had several over the years and pretty faithfully talked to people. Now it's been, let's see, we're almost at 18 years consistently every week, and uh, they know when to pull the ripcord on my crazy ideas and say, hey, slow down. Hey, this is impacting this part of your life. That it's more than just a business partner, and those have been profound. Then the third and final person or category of person I have in my life is a mentee or someone that's a few steps behind, because again, that's what slows me down. I have to think about what I did, the usually the stupidity that I did, and I like to tell them I already paid the stupid tax for you, so don't pay it again. And being able to share that. So I think those three people in my life have really been able to help me know when to pivot or when to push through.
Yes, yes. Viewers, Ryan is sharing some wisdom with us today. What he just said there is worth a little rewind, a little back up, 15 or 20 seconds and listen to that again. And Ryan, I will share with you, while it sounds maybe to some people a little strange, that the person that has made their transition from your life is still very much available to you. The imprint that they've made in you, I can tell, is huge, and I suggest you continue talking to them.
Thank you.
Um, what did last year strip away that you're grateful is gone?
I think we all hold on to things tightly, and we don't realize how tightly we hold on to things until it starts to get tugged out of our hands. It's like playing tug of war. Before the game starts, you're holding the rope with all of your might, and you're doing just fine. It doesn't hurt to hold the rope. But at some point, when that tug of war starts pulling you towards that center line, you start feeling that rope burn. And sometimes you have to let go and lose. And that's not the worst thing, because that might mean you're not falling on the ground or being dragged along. And there were a couple things, and without getting too specifically personal, but that I would say my wife and I held on to really tightly on that rope. And we always could hold them without anything pulling on the other end. And, beginning in April 2024, over the last couple of years, one of those things that I would say unnecessarily held tightly was just the giant came on the other side of that and started pulling on that, and really forced us to decide what's worth letting go or what's worth getting the rope burn for. And some things are worth the rope burn, absolutely worth the rope burn. And we realized that why were we holding on to it? It wasn't worth it. It was like, it just wasn't worth it. It was like trying to hold on to water. You can't do it. And it was something
Yeah,
so insignificant, and yet we had held it so tightly. And sometimes you have to have those things that rip that rope away from you to let you know that you never needed it in the first place. And it hurts. It was a wound to our ego. It was a wound to something we were sentimental about. It was a wound to our finances. It was a pretty deep wound. It cut in a lot of different spots. But at the end of the day, I can sit with my wife on the couch and say, you know what, we have each other, we have our family, we have our health. That thing, yeah, it hurts, but man, it wasn't that important.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Great book title when you're ready to write another one. Holding on to water. Love it. Tell me this, what is something about leadership that no one prepared you for?
Mhm. I would say I got into leadership unprepared, totally. I mean, literally, walked down with my dad to the courthouse when I was 14 years old because they wouldn't let me sign my own papers to incorporate my first business. And so, in my neither one of my parents had a business background at all. They weren't business savvy, didn't have an entrepreneurial bone in their body, or even I would say didn't even know how to balance books. They had their checkbooks that they were balancing on paper when they were sending bills, like we used to do, but. That was it. And so I think I just came in blind, and I think that naivety and age was a benefit in some respects. But I think most people, when they think of leadership, think of it as a title and an ego boost. And the best leadership moments I've had are when I'm humbled on my keister and have to figure out how to lead through that. And I know it's a sensitive topic, but 2020 was a great leveling for leaders. There was not a playbook on how to navigate all the complexities of the pandemic and all of the other political things and societal things that happened back to back to back to back. There was no playbook. And I think what was really interesting was watching leaders at all levels of companies, organizations, government, and how they responded well and not well in different respects. And I think that's true leadership is when you get knocked down, how do you get up and make sure you're bringing your team with you? It's not about you. You're not an island. And leaders sometimes are going to get the dirtiest, the messiest. I always say, I have a couple coffee shops that I own. And I've got to be the one to go clean the bathroom first. And I don't work there. I'm not even the general manager. They're in my portfolio. But if I go there and the bathroom's dirty, I'm gonna go and ask the team, where do you keep the scrub brush? And I think there's that servant leadership um, that's what wins. And it doesn't mean you can't be firm. I think there's a big misnomer that, oh, if you're the one cleaning the toilet or serving your team, then you obviously can't be firm and authoritative. I think you can absolutely have direction and bring people along and make hard decisions. But you've got to also be willing to lead too.
Yes, 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 yes. So tell me this, how does Ryan recognize when fear is information and not a stop sign?
Mm. When fear is information and not a stop sign. I think it goes back, and this is you have to know where you're going. I think that's the bottom line. There's always information, there's always noise, there's always naysayers, there's always going to be something to tell you you're doing something wrong. Always, no matter what you do, big or small, you've always got those people, booing at you. Recently there was a commencement speaker that I just saw that got booed, and I think his work's actually really impressive. Most of it, I don't agree with anyone 100%, but that's good. And he got booed. I was shocked at his own school. Um, but he kept going, and I think that's the moral of the story. One of my oldest son, he's very competitive. I have no idea where he gets that from. Definitely not from me. But he wouldn't go to bed one day. He was like 4 at the time, and so I turned it into a race. And so I said, "I'll race you up the stairs." And he starts running up the stairs, and he kept looking back over his shoulder at me. And I said, "Okay, here's an opportunity." So I blew right past him and went and sat on his bed. And he comes in there stomping his feet, huffing and puffing. "Why did you win?" There were so many opportunities for a lesson there. Like, you don't always win the races, but what I said was when he came in and he got close to me, I looked him right in the eyes. I said, buddy, you were so busy looking over your shoulder, seeing where I was, that you weren't focused on where you were going. And I think that's the lesson that I think about a lot is, yeah, there's stop signs. And sometimes fear is just information overload and the naysayers on the sidelines. The question is, if you know where you're going, you're going to keep going and running full speed ahead and not be afraid of the things, the information that causes fear. But if you don't have a clear vision, you might run right past a stop sign and get a ticket for it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you have to have a clear vision, and I don't think a lot of leaders do. Sometimes they just run blindly forward because that's that's all we've got, right? And sometimes you're in that panic mode where you're just almost in survival mode and you just keep going and fighting, but you forget why you're running the race in the first place. And I think that is how you can distinguish the stop signs from just fear and information overload.
Love this. You know, as I've been through my journey, I've learned that fear, along with other dreaded things we read so many books about and hear about, like the imposter syndrome,
Yeah.
to me, they're simply opportunities for growth.
Hmm. Yep.
Just simply opportunities for growth. I love how you're mentoring and leading your kids. It's great, great, great,
Thank you.
great. Tell me this. I think I know the answer, but I'm going to ask anyway. What impact are you most proud of, not publicly or professionally, but personally?
Yeah. I think those that are in my inner circle, not the ones that get to, see me on a stage or see me online. And I try to be the same person everywhere, for the record. Um, but I think if, and occasionally I'll ask some of my closer friends, I think they would say I'm faithful and I'm loyal. I am who I say that I am. I'm not putting on a show. Obviously be a little more vulnerable in a smaller setting than on a public forum, but um, I think that's probably one of the biggest things is what you see is what you get. And I'm not perfect. I say always learning, often humbled. I think that's probably one of the greatest things is, and you don't have to spend extra energy being who you are, no matter where you are. And I think that's, the commitments that I make, whether that's volunteering, we're actively involved locally here, volunteering regularly, and I show up when I say I'm going to show up, and I try to instill those values to my family, and my friends know that there's just someone that they can rely on, and I think that's important. Being a man of my word.
Yeah. I see, I'm sure you see it as well, where we sign up to do something and we get upward of, not just a reminder here and there, but like 10 or 12 reminders. And I'm always struck by it when I look at it. I'm like, people either don't know how to program the system or they have a lot of people not showing up. And I
Yeah.
just can't imagine not showing up for something I said I would be there. In fact, I often tell people if I don't show up, in fact, if I'm not early, don't call me, call the ER.
Right.
Um, yeah, yeah, that's just not going to happen. So tell me this, how do you ensure the soul of what you're building isn't lost in its success?
Yeah, I think that's really good too. I think, as I said, I've been knocked down a lot. Those are the things you don't read the articles about, but I think that has kept me grounded. I do, like I said, the running mates in my life, the mentors in my life, they're the ones that also keep me grounded. And I'm pretty self-reflective. Like I record every single presentation I give. If it's a room of, 12 executives or a ballroom of 5,000 people, I'm recording that, replaying that. I read every review that comes in. And I listen to emails. I create committees is a strong word, but I create little groups of people that I see interacting with my content a great deal. And I'll pull them aside and say, hey, thanks so much for interacting a lot. I'd love for you to be a voice. Am I deviating from, what you want to hear? And so from, a couple different touch points, but I think having people speak into your life and then being willing to listen, but also being willing to say, no, that's not where I'm going. Back to the vision thing. If you know where the mission is, saying, hey, I appreciate your feedback. That's not aligned, or tell me how it could be aligned. I think that because everyone wants you to do what they want to do,
Yeah,
and so I think that there's a fine line. But if you're grounded in knowing where you're running and what that finish line is for you, and you have voices that can speak truth, both good and bad, I never surround myself with people that just praise me.
yeah,
Um, because that's easy. Abraham Lincoln, there's a book, and I think it's called A Team of Rivals. And it's all about these people that Abraham Lincoln brought into his cabinet that had different political views than him. He didn't want anyone at his table that agreed with him. And I think that's brilliant. And so many leaders are afraid to have
Yeah.
naysayers in the room. But I think there's a lot of wisdom in getting different opinions.
Yeah, it's one of the things I love about my team, both of my teams, the one at the academy and one for my personal brand is um, um, they are people, and I've created the environment where I want to hear what they think. Ultimately, I'm going to make my own decision, but I love having that feedback from people that aren't just saying yes because of
Yeah.
who you are. Tell me this, what boundary has become essential to your sustainability?
Yeah, I think one is I work a lot less. And it's counterintuitive, but I have been more productive since I put firm boundaries on stopping work, leaving work at work. And does that mean I won't take an after hours call, or does that mean that, there's occasionally I won't spend a night out, late at work? Absolutely not. Life happens. So I'm not advocating that you can't work at 5:01 p.m. Or as some more recent generations, 3:01 p.m. Whatever it is. But having those firm boundaries so that someone knows that if they're going to call me after hours, it better be an emergency, otherwise they're going to hear about it. Um, and I also, it's a simple thing, but for a lot of the listeners, they probably have these tools. Slack for me is my work channel. Do not put personal stuff on my Slack channel. I mean, like if I'm in a shared group, sure. But if you want something personal, text it to me. But if you need me for work, do not text it to me. I will not respond to a work text. Um,
Uh,
and that's just one easy boundary because I can turn Slack off. And so people know, like I have people that I have dual conversations with. They're like, where did I share it? I'm like, well, it's personal, so you texted it to me. And some people get frustrated with that, but for me, it's like my phone is a personal device, and very few people have that number. And so if you have that number, even at work, very few people have that number. So if you have that number, then you use that for personal things or emergencies. Those are the only two reasons you can use my phone. Everything else is Slack, and if I don't respond, it probably can wait.
yes, yes. Keeps you in control of who's getting your control, right?
Exactly.
I know I had this thing recently. I get up at 3:30 every morning. It's my favorite time of day, and it's my most creative time in a day. And I spend a lot of time writing. And um, I often take 5 a.m. meetings. And so when I'm on Maui at my home, 5 a.m. is suddenly 2 a.m. When the time changed, I missed that the time was changing. And in Hawaii, we don't do daylight savings time. So suddenly 2 hours became three. And then I had this revelation of like, why are you talking to people at 5 a.m.? It's still your creative time. This is still
Yeah.
your sacred time. Blocked it on my calendar. So it's fun watching people that could get to me at 5 a.m. not be able to reach me anymore. And,
Yeah.
there's plenty of other hours in the day, right? So tell me, what is the boldest vision Ryan Vet has next?
The boldest vision. I think I'm living in the middle of a boldest vision if I can choose that. I think for me, and if you follow any part of my journey, I was always creating, launching the new thing, investing in the new thing, running the new thing, whatever it was, depending on my role at that point in time. I think the boldest vision for me is I'm not doing new things,
I love
at least not right now. And my focus, at least till the end of 2027, so we've got a long runway ahead of us, is writing, speaking, investing in that only. Which is just so hard for me because I'm still getting pitch decks and I'm still getting these opportunities and it tears at me. But I think again, saying no. We started earlier with saying no. I think that's so important. So I think the boldest thing is I'm not starting anything new, at least for the next till 2027. So that's hard, but good. It's been really good.
Yeah, yeah. I know someone who is starting something new. They're taking the whole month of February and not only taking it off, they're going into a personal silent, like alone
Mm,
retreat. And um, I just find it fascinating because I do them frequently for a few days and they really offer so much. And I think that idea of not just pressing the pause button from day life, but to do it in a way that you're pressing pause to open up something else is very appealing. I'm
Yeah.
not there. I'm not there yet, but it's got my attention. Tell me this, what does renewal look like for you beyond the typical rest or a day off?
Yeah, I think renewal is it's different for everyone. And perspective for me, I mentioned my values, faith is really important. So being closely tied to my faith community, giving back to them, and just spending time volunteering and um, being in community with people that I'm aligned with is just really helpful. Obviously, family time, spending time. When we go on a family vacation, there's difference between trips and vacations, and with kids, most become trips. But Disney World, for example, trip, definitely not a vacation. You need a vacation after you get back. But when we go on family vacations to a resort or something where we just get some time away, just as a family, it's completely unplugged. My phone is on. I've programmed it for vacation mode. There's only one person, I will not tell you who that is, that can get a hold of me. Everything else will get blocked. And no emails, no Slack. Like it makes my all my notifications go away. It makes my phone just a dumb phone, effectively. And I only turn it on like once a day anyway. Um, and I think that's been so important is sometimes you just need to unplug and be with your family or your loved ones or whomever that group of people is for you.
Or yourself?
Or
At
yourself. Yeah.
times, or just yourself at times, right? Tell me
Yes.
this, Ryan, what does legacy mean to you at this stage of life?
I think legacy, and I love that question. I actually get to speak at a conference all about legacy, celebrating an anniversary later this year. The organization is, but I think for me, it's answering the question: Are you pursuing significance or are you chasing success? And every single time in life, every single crossroads we have, are you doing something that's going to build your kingdom, which will fade when you fade from this earth? Or are you doing something that's going to last long after you're gone? And not to be morbid or anything like that, but we're all here for the here and now. The question is, are we building for tomorrow, for tomorrow's society, for tomorrow's culture? Is what we're doing making an impact in our bank account and growing it today, which there's nothing wrong with that. But are we thinking about what is the legacy impact of what we do far beyond that? So I think a lot of what I question is, okay, yes, this is good for me today, but is this good for those that I love and care for and am responsible for in the future tomorrow? Whether that's, micro perspective on my community, my family, my loved ones, my friends, or a macro, the planet, or our country. And how can you make sure that what you're doing is helpful to that? Even with the words we say. I think a lot of today is polarized in a lot of the words that we say. And every word we have, we're either investing it or we're throwing it away. And the question is, are the words that we're spending, are we investing those to make the world a better place? You can have contrarian ideas, you can have arguments that are helpful and beneficial or investments to make the world a better place. Or are you just throwing away words and wasting words because that's what people around you are doing and it's
Yes.
counterproductive. So I think that's all part of what I think of when I think of legacy.
Love this. Love this. If a very, very, very young Ryan were listening to this podcast, what would you tell him?
Put away your ego.
Love
It's
it.
that easy. It's yeah, I think pride is just so dangerous. And you don't know you're prideful oftentimes until it's too late. And I can just think of so many instances, whether it's firing off a sarcastic email as a 16-year-old to someone, whether it was pretending I was better than I was, whatever it was, pride every single time. It comes before destruction, and I think that old proverb's true. And so I would say just put away your ego. It is not worth it. If you do the right thing, whether or not people are looking, you will get the accolades that you want, and you'll be able to sleep while doing it.
Yes, yes. I have one final question for you
Yeah.
today. What have you learned about trust?
I think trust is core to just about any human relationship that you have, whether that is a romantic relationship, a friendship, a work relationship, leadership relationship. Even, I mean, look at Edelman's Trust Barometer and news, NGOs, and our government and institutions. So I think trust is foundational, and trust is definitely something earned, and it takes a long time to earn trust, and it takes a moment, maybe a second, to destroy trust. And I think we all have moments where, uh, the more you do to earn trust, when you do make a misstep, because we're human, we're going to misstep, unfortunately. Uh, if you've worked really hard to earn trust, those missteps, if someone understands your intentions and you continue, you're a person that's true to what you say you're going to do, usually you can earn trust back a little bit faster, but it's hard, and you have to be humble when you lose trust.
Yeah.
You have to realize that it's your fault. You can't play the victim. I did it because of this. You have to work hard, and it's building up again. And I think a lot of leaders will write people off that don't trust them anymore.
Yeah.
But usually it's because the leader lost the trust.
Yeah. The slope of regaining trust is much, much higher than the original slope that you gained the trust in
Absolutely.
the first place. So, Ryan Vet, thank you for being on Opening Pathways today. How do we find you?
Yeah, Tom, I appreciate that. I'm pretty easy to find online. Ryan Vet, just VET. Don't try to add extra letters. But you can find me there. You can find my podcast. You can find my Substack, newsletter, website, all of that fun stuff, and stay in touch. A lot of those resources are completely free for anyone.
Thank you, Ryan. It's been great having you as a guest.
Thanks, Tom.
And to my viewers, this is Tom LaNoble, and I'll see you next time.